Dr. Prateek Joshi took his family on one last flight. They never made it. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. They were the kind of family people envied. A brilliant doctor, a devoted wife, 3 beautiful children. By all accounts, Dr. Prateek Joshi had everything a man could ever want: success, stability, love, and purpose. But on the morning of June 12, 2025, as the sun rose over Ahmedabad, India, the world would watch in horror as everything he built vanished in the blink of an eye. The crash of Air India Flight 171 wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a perfect life shattered, a routine flight turned funeral. And for those who knew Dr. Joshi personally, it wasn't just grief they felt. It was disbelief, because what happened in that sky didn't make sense. Dr. Prateek Joshi was the kind of man whose name you didn't forget. Born and raised in Rajasthan, India, he was one of those rare individuals who made his community proud the moment he stepped into a white coat. After completing his MBBS in India, he moved to the United Kingdom, where he quickly rose through the medical ranks. His specialty, radiology. His talent, undeniable. For the past 5 years, he'd been working with the NHS, known for his precision in diagnosis and his calming bedside manner. Colleagues described him as sharp, humble, and always 2 steps ahead. His patients remembered him not just for his skill, but for his warmth. He married Dr. Komi Vyas, a pediatrician, in a wedding that brought together 2 families who were proud of what their children had become. Together, they built a life in the quiet suburbs of Essex. It wasn't flashy, but it was beautiful. They had 3 children. Mariah, the eldest, was only 7 but already curious and wise beyond her years. Nakul, the middle child, was 5 and full of energy. And Pradyut, the baby of the family, had just turned 3. They were a unit, tight, inseparable, and full of promise. Dr. Joshi often told his friends, "My family is my greatest accomplishment." And then, they were gone. It was supposed to be a simple trip, a visit back to India to reconnect with their roots, attend a cousin's wedding, let the children meet their grandparents, taste the mangoes of summer, the kind of trip millions of families take every year. They arrived in Ahmedabad in late May, planning to stay 3 weeks. Everything was going according to schedule. Photos on Facebook showed bright smiles, traditional clothes, and cousins playing in the yard. There was laughter, togetherness, celebration. But on June 12th, they boarded their return flight back to London. It was Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, reliable, trusted, safe. At least, it was supposed to be. The Joshi family sat together in row 23. According to the boarding records, Dr. Joshi had requested a window seat for his children. He wanted them to see the clouds. What he didn't know is that the sky was about to betray him. The flight was delayed, not because of weather, not because of luggage, but because of something the airline refused to comment on. For nearly 45 minutes, the crew held passengers at the gate with no explanation. Several travelers reported seeing engineers walking around the aircraft, particularly near the undercarriage. One passenger posted a video to Instagram, now deleted, of a man in a maintenance uniform wiping his forehead and shaking his head while looking at the landing gear. When asked about the delay, flight attendants only said, "Technical clearance, just a routine check." But it wasn't routine. A former Air India engineer who spoke anonymously would later claim that Flight 171 had reported hydraulic issues the night before. But instead of grounding the aircraft, the plane was given an override pass due to high volume and holiday demand. In other words, money won. At 6:02 a.m., just minutes before takeoff, Dr. Joshi called his brother in Jaipur. It was a short call, less than a minute. He said, "We're about to take off. I'll call you once we land. Give Ma a kiss from me." His voice was calm. There was no panic, no clue that within an hour, he and everyone around him would be engulfed in smoke and flames. But here's where the story gets strange. After the crash, that same phone, Dr. Joshi's, was recovered near the wreckage. And according to investigators, the last message ever typed into his phone, but never sent, read, "Something's not right with the plane." It was typed at 6:24 a.m. Takeoff was at 6:25. Less than 11 minutes into the flight, Air India Flight 171 veered off its path. Eyewitnesses from a nearby housing colony said they saw the plane tilting unnaturally, almost as if one wing was heavier than the other. Seconds later, it descended sharply. And then, silence. The jetliner slammed into a medical student hostel near the outskirts of Ahmedabad. A fireball engulfed the 3-story building. Emergency responders said it was a scene from a nightmare. All 241 passengers on board were killed, including Dr. Prateek Joshi, his wife Komi, and their 3 children. On the ground, 6 more lives were lost, and nearly 24 students in the hostel were severely injured, some disfigured for life. And yet, even with all this destruction, officials insisted. It appears to be a mechanical failure. Nothing suspicious so far. But not everyone agreed. Just hours after the crash, rumors began to spread across social media. A maintenance worker at the airport was missing. Flight logs were altered. And one aviation blogger pointed out that the plane's black box had gone silent for nearly 7 seconds right before the descent. That's not normal. Several experts started to ask uncomfortable questions. Why wasn't the plane grounded if it had mechanical issues the night before? Why did Dr. Joshi type a warning moments before takeoff? And most haunting of all, was this crash really an accident? In the days that followed, tributes poured in. Hospitals held vigils. Families wept on the tarmac. Friends uploaded photo collages of the Joshi children, swinging in parks, hugging their dad, baking cupcakes in their London home. But one question remained on everyone's lips. Why did this have to happen to them? And behind the tears, another thought began to rise. Was this more than just a tragic accident? It should have been grounded. That's what insiders would later whisper. Not just because of weather, not because of paperwork, but because of a warning that was ignored. Air India Flight 171 was cleared for takeoff on the morning of June 12, 2025. What passengers didn't know was that the aircraft had been flagged for mechanical issues less than 12 hours earlier. And yet, it flew anyway. This is the chapter where questions begin to multiply, and where the accident starts to look like something far more disturbing. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner used for Flight 171 was over 10 years old. Though the aircraft was still considered airworthy under international aviation law, it had logged more than 42,000 flight hours, and had undergone a major maintenance inspection just 6 months prior. According to maintenance records later leaked to the press, the aircraft had experienced intermittent hydraulic pressure anomalies, specifically affecting the landing gear and rudder control systems. These weren't minor issues. In fact, on June 11th, just the night before the crash, a flight engineer filed a cautionary report. It read, "Hydraulic pressure fluctuating above tolerance. Recommend aircraft be inspected prior to next long-haul operation." But instead of pulling the plane from the roster, a senior operations manager authorized an override, signing off that the flight could proceed under monitoring conditions. That single signature may have doomed 241 souls. The first sign something was wrong came on the tarmac. Passengers were already seated. The cabin crew was conducting final checks. But outside, things weren't calm. A member of the ground crew, who later spoke anonymously to reporters, described a moment that haunted him. One of the technicians radioed in that there was a leak near the left hydraulic actuator. He was told to wipe it and log it. That's not standard. You don't just wipe a hydraulic leak on a 787 before a transcontinental flight. This same technician, according to employee logs, clocked out early and never returned to work after the crash. Authorities have been unable to locate him for questioning. 2 days after the crash, a grainy image surfaced on Reddit, a photo reportedly taken by a passenger while waiting to board. In the distance, 2 maintenance staff can be seen crouching under the aircraft's wing, tools scattered, with one holding what appears to be a thermal sensor. Redditors zoomed in, adjusted contrast, and began analyzing. What they noticed was unsettling. One of the men wasn't wearing Air India gear. There appeared to be a loose panel cover, propped open against regulation. Was this last-minute maintenance, or something more? Investigative journalists began chasing the story, and what they uncovered next sent ripples through the aviation world. Flight 171's digital maintenance logs were accessed within hours of the crash. What was unusual, however, was that a backup copy stored on a secondary server didn't match the primary. Specifically, the entry from June 11th, the one flagging the hydraulic issue, was missing, completely erased. Only after cross-referencing multiple backups was the original log restored. Who deleted it, and why? That question led investigators to a name: Rahul P. Deshmukh, a mid-level IT supervisor who had been given temporary log access the night of the 11th. When asked about the deletion, Rahul claimed, "I was told to clean the logs for storage space. That's all." But the logs from other flights were untouched. Only Flight 171's entries were missing. Even Air India couldn't explain why one plane's log was singled out. And it didn't stop there. At exactly 6:25 a.m., Flight 171 lifted off the runway. The takeoff was technically clean, no system alerts, no cockpit flags. To passengers, it felt normal, calm. But according to the plane's black box, within 6 minutes of being airborne, the rudder control system began to fluctuate. That shouldn't have happened. The rudder is what keeps the aircraft stable in crosswinds. When it malfunctions, the plane starts to sway unnaturally and becomes almost impossible to control at cruising altitude. In the black box audio, a tense voice can be heard: "Control drift starboard. Pressure falling. Request manual override." Then, another voice, possibly the co-pilot, adds, "This doesn't make sense. We cleared diagnostics. Why is this happening?" And then 7 seconds of silence. That's not a glitch. That's a blackout. At 6:36 a.m., Flight 171 dropped over 3,000 feet in 45 seconds. That's not a steady decline. That's a nosedive. The plane began banking hard to the right, directly over a densely populated housing complex in the Navrangpura district of Ahmedabad. What happened in the cockpit during those final seconds is still being pieced together. But flight simulators suggest the pilots attempted a hard reroute to avoid populated buildings. They almost succeeded. Instead, the plane clipped a rooftop and slammed into the edge of a medical hostel housing 27 students, many of whom were still asleep. Explosions rocked the neighborhood. The fuel tanks ignited on impact, and within minutes, fire swallowed the fuselage. All 241 passengers died. Among them, Dr. Prateek Joshi, 39, Dr. Komi Vyas, 38, Mariah Joshi, 7, Nakul Joshi, 5, Pradyut Joshi, 3. They were seated in row 23, seats A through E. Investigators believe they died instantly upon impact. Also on board were 2 newlywed couples, a retired Indian diplomat and a software engineer traveling to the UK for a visa interview. So many dreams extinguished in seconds. But the Joshi family quickly became the face of the tragedy. Not just because of who they were, but because of what the father tried to do moments before death. Dr. Joshi's phone was recovered, badly damaged but salvageable. Forensic teams found a message typed at 6:24 a.m. Unsent. Something's not right with the plane. That one sentence has haunted investigators. Why didn't he send it? Did he sense something? Was there a sound? A vibration? Or had he been tipped off? Just 3 days after the crash, a whistleblower email was leaked to the press. Sent anonymously to a major Indian newspaper, the email's subject line read, "Flight 171 was not fit to fly. You've been warned." In it, the sender, who claimed to be a former maintenance contractor, stated, "This is not the first time Air India ignored a hydraulic fault warning to keep up with demand. I reported similar issues on 3 other planes this year alone. One of them was 171. Check the logs. They'll cover it up." The email was traced to a cybercafe in Nagpur. No ID, no security footage. The sender vanished. But the claim it made started gaining traction. especially after 2 Air India board members quietly resigned the following week. Let's connect the dots. A plane flagged for serious issues gets cleared to fly. Maintenance logs are mysteriously deleted. A key ground technician disappears. A respected doctor senses something is wrong and dies minutes later. Too many coincidences. And now families are demanding answers. One grieving relative was quoted at a press conference. "We're not just burying loved ones. We're burying the truth. What if Flight 171 wasn't just negligence? What if someone wanted that plane to crash?" It's a chilling thought, but not impossible. The aviation industry is no stranger to sabotage, corruption, or fatal shortcuts. And the deeper this story goes, the more it becomes clear. This wasn't just a plane crash. It was a failure of systems, of ethics, of basic human responsibility. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. At 6:25 a.m., the wheels of Air India Flight 171 left the ground. Smoothly, silently, like every other routine takeoff. But by 6:37 a.m., that same plane was a fireball in the sky, hurtling downward over a sleeping Indian neighborhood. Within 12 minutes, the flight that carried 241 passengers, including the family of Dr. Prateek Joshi, went from ascending calmly through the clouds to shattering against a building in a blaze that could be seen for miles. What happened in those 12 minutes? What exactly went wrong in the cockpit? And why was one of the pilots heard saying, "It's not responding. We've lost it," just seconds before the crash? This chapter reconstructs the final moments of Flight 171, second by second, using black box data, radar footage, eyewitness accounts, and the haunting evidence left behind. And it begins with a sound, one that still haunts investigators. After initial takeoff from Ahmedabad's Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport, Flight 171 was cleared to climb to cruise altitude, 37,000 feet. The aircraft's first 6 minutes were uneventful on the surface. But deep inside the systems, the plane was already failing. According to recovered flight data recorder, FDR logs, fluctuations in hydraulic pressure began to show within 4 minutes of takeoff. The plane's rudder ratio, a system designed to automatically adjust rudder sensitivity based on airspeed, spiked twice, triggering a warning light. In the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, a brief exchange followed. First officer, "Seeing some rudder lag. Captain, noted. Monitor it. Could be residual." First officer, "We're off by 4 degrees. This may sound minor, but on a massive jetliner traveling 450 miles per hour, 4 degrees is the difference between stable flight and a slow death spiral." And then, a low mechanical hum began. At 6:31 a.m., an automated system chime sounded in the cockpit. Hydraulic pressure system B low. The crew remained calm. They ran through emergency checklists. But seconds later, 2 more warnings appeared on the dash. Yaw damper fault. Spoiler control fault. These aren't routine. Together, they indicated the aircraft was no longer managing airflow properly, meaning it could tilt, yaw, or roll without pilot command. The captain's voice, normally calm and composed, suddenly tightened. "I don't like this. Trim's not holding. Let's contact tower." He never got the chance. In just 8 seconds, the aircraft dropped 1,100 feet. Passengers would have felt it immediately, a gut punch sensation of falling. In the cabin, screams began. Overhead compartments popped open. A flight attendant's intercom message was abruptly cut off. In the cockpit, first officer, "Pitch response is gone. Captain, manual override. Pull up." First officer, "It's not responding. We've lost it." At this point, the captain radioed air traffic control, ATC, with a chilling distress call. "Flight 171, we've lost hydraulic control. Request emergency vector. Losing altitude." But ATC never responded. The call was cut mid-transmission, possibly due to sudden systems failure or power surge. On the ground, the plane's transponder began broadcasting erratic altitude signals. It was no longer steady. It was falling in waves. Multiple eyewitnesses from the Navrangpura district reported a terrifying sight in the sky. From rooftop terraces and balconies, they saw the plane wobbling like a drunk bird, tilting left, then snapping back right. One local tea vendor, Rahul Bansal, told media, "It wasn't gliding, it was fighting the air. I saw fire near the back, and then it tilted almost sideways." Others claimed to hear loud booms, not explosions, but deep mechanical sounds, as if the aircraft was trying to correct itself and failing. Another eyewitness swore the plane nearly clipped an apartment block before correcting course again. "It looked like it was trying to avoid us," she said. "It wasn't falling randomly, it was trying to land somewhere." That may have been true, because in the final minute, the pilots made one last desperate move. Radar data shows that Flight 171 began a hard right bank at 6:36 and 7 seconds a.m., likely a last-ditch attempt to align with a small emergency field near the outskirts of the city. But at this point, the right ailerons, part of the wing control system, had already failed. The pilots had partial control over the left side, and almost none on the right. This created an unrecoverable imbalance. In the black box, the captain's final recorded words are barely audible, but haunting. "Come on. Come on. Pull it. Damn it. Keep us level." Then, a scream, metal tearing, static, and silence. Flight 171 descended at over 2,400 feet per minute, impacting the top floor of a medical student hostel. The building had housed 27 occupants, most of them students asleep after night duty rotations. The aircraft's left wing clipped a communications tower, tearing it apart. This deflected the nose of the plane just slightly, causing the aircraft to slam into the eastern edge of the building instead of crashing directly through the center. This unintended deflection likely saved many lives, but it didn't save the Joshi family. Row 23, where Dr. Prateek Joshi, his wife, and 3 children sat, was located directly above the aircraft's left wing, right over the fuel tanks. The moment of impact caused a massive rupture, igniting both tanks and turning the rear cabin into a furnace in seconds. Emergency responders who reached the scene within 15 minutes later described the interior as melted, nothing recognizable, pure steel and bone. Aviation experts reviewing the flight data agree. The pilots tried everything. They rerouted manually. They engaged backup hydraulic systems. They even attempted a controlled descent to avoid civilian buildings. One crash investigator stated, "This wasn't pilot error. This was systems failure." They fought until the very last second. Had the plane remained stable for just 90 more seconds, it could have reached a nearby clearing and executed a rough but survivable crash landing. But fate didn't give them 90 seconds. It barely gave them 12 minutes. When the aircraft hit, the shockwave shattered windows across a 5-block radius. Car alarms went off. Electricity cut out. Fire spread almost instantly. Rescue workers described crushed bodies, burnt ID cards, and children's backpacks fused into seats. Photos from the scene, many of which were withheld from the public, showed a charred doll wedged between 2 rows of metal, a melted stethoscope belonging to Dr. Komi Vyas, a family passport bundle singed but still readable, a phone, Dr. Joshi's, with its screen cracked but intact. Investigators pulled one final data point from that phone, a photo never uploaded, never shared, taken inside the plane. It was blurry, rushed, but you could make out Mariah, the eldest daughter, smiling through the window. Clouds outside, a soft ray of light on her face. The timestamp? 6:26 a.m., 1 minute after takeoff, 11 minutes before death. In the wake of the crash, Air India issued a statement, calling it a tragic accident likely caused by mechanical failure. But many weren't convinced. Why were maintenance records deleted before takeoff? Why did the airline override the engineer's warning hours before the flight? Why was a technician missing? And why had Dr. Joshi typed a message saying, "Something's not right with the plane," just before it left the runway? The families of the victims weren't just grieving. They were organizing. A class action lawsuit against Air India and its oversight board was launched within 10 days of the incident, alleging gross negligence, concealment of risk, and possible foul play. And then came the real shock. A leak from within the investigation team hinted that Dr. Joshi may not have been just a victim. He may have been the reason this flight wasn't supposed to take off. By now, the world knew the name Dr. Prateek Joshi. They knew the heartbreaking image of his smiling family. They knew how Air India Flight 171 had fallen from the sky in a blaze of fire and steel. But what the public didn't know, what authorities deliberately kept quiet in those early days, was that Dr. Joshi's life before the crash wasn't as perfect as it seemed. And as the investigation deepened, a darker picture emerged, one that raised terrifying new questions. Had Dr. Joshi been silenced? Was this just a crash or a cover-up? This chapter dives deep into the final weeks before the fatal flight and exposes what Dr. Joshi may have discovered that made him a target. In the halls of London's Royal Essex Medical Centre, Dr. Prateek Joshi was seen as reliable, brilliant, and calm under pressure. But behind closed doors, something had changed. In the 3 months before the crash, Dr. Joshi's behavior shifted. Subtle at first, then noticeable. A close colleague reported that he was distracted, less engaged. Another said he would stay late in the radiology lab long after his shifts ended, often looking at scans that weren't assigned to him. He began making personal calls during clinic hours, something he'd never done before. One nurse noticed him scribbling notes from a heavily redacted medical file, muttering, "They can't hide this forever." What was he talking about? Financial records obtained through the family's legal team revealed something else. In the weeks leading up to the crash, Dr. Joshi had withdrawn nearly £27,000 from various personal savings accounts. This was highly unusual. He had no debt, no known investment plans, and according to his wife's sister, he never mentioned any financial concerns. Where did the money go? Investigators traced part of it to a transfer made to an account in Switzerland, a private banking institution known for confidentiality. The recipient's name was redacted in official reports, but a leaked document showed the transaction memo. Flight 171, clearance files. Clearance files? What kind of files was a radiologist buying or protecting? And more importantly, why tie them to the very flight that would kill him? The turning point, according to several colleagues, was a specific patient case. In late April 2025, Dr. Joshi reviewed a routine scan of a 42-year-old man with abdominal pain. But something about the case disturbed him. He asked for the original test data, not just the final report. He reran the imaging twice, and then he locked the results in his private cabinet. The next day, he requested a quiet meeting with the hospital board. No one knows what was discussed, but after that meeting, his wife, Komi, confided in a friend. Prateek's scared. He found something he wasn't supposed to. He won't tell me what, but he keeps saying, "If something happens to us, it won't be an accident." Among the digital files recovered from Dr. Joshi's laptop, one draft email stood out. It was never sent. Addressed to a contact at the UK Medical Ethics Council, it read, "The scan manipulations are not isolated. I found 6 others. The system is compromised. I need protection before I go public." This involves more than just falsified reports. It's linked to overseas licensing and patient deaths. "I'll send the files before my return from India." He signed it, Dr. Prateek Joshi. The timestamp on the draft? May 28, 2025. 2 weeks before the crash. Was he about to become a whistleblower? And was someone trying to stop him? It wasn't just Dr. Joshi who seemed uneasy. His wife, Dr. Komi Vyas, also began acting differently in her final days. A pediatrician known for her warmth, Komi was described by her patients as sunshine in a white coat. But before they left for India, she had become more withdrawn. She called her cousin in Gujarat and said something strange. "We're coming home early." Prateek said he needs to meet someone he trusts. "If anything happens, just look in the green folder." That folder, later found in a locked drawer in their Essex home, contained handwritten notes, a flash drive, and a single printed sentence. "They'll call it a malfunction." It wasn't. The flash drive, now in the possession of Indian authorities, is believed to contain confidential hospital data. But parts of it were encrypted. Leaked information suggests the files include altered radiology reports, a list of over 30 patients with matching diagnosis codes, communication logs with international licensing agencies, metadata indicating changes made outside of hospital systems. Why would a radiologist have access to this? Unless he had seen something illegal and was documenting it. And here's where it gets chilling. The encryption was broken just days before Chapter 4 of this story was written. One document stood out, a PDF titled A171, Final Manifest and Exception List. And in that file were two names that didn't match the official passenger log for Flight 171. Ghost passengers. The exception list uncovered from the flash drive revealed two additional seat entries, seats 4B and 4C, that were booked, paid for, but not listed in final manifests. The passport numbers were blurred in the report, but internal whistleblowers claim one of the bookings was under a diplomatic alias trace to a known defense contractor operating out of Dubai. If that's true, why was a defense contractor on a commercial flight with a whistleblower doctor? Or perhaps more frightening, was that contractor ever on the plane at all? Because according to airport CCTV footage from that morning, there is no visual evidence of anyone boarding in seats 4B or 4C. They were booked, paid, but never seen. And then came one more twist. A passenger, seated 4 rows ahead of the Joshi family, had taken a selfie video during taxiing. In the background, you can briefly see a man in a black suit standing near the cockpit door. He's not wearing crew uniform. He's not a passenger. And he disappears from the frame seconds later. That man has never been identified. Air India claims it was likely a technician or inspector, but no such role is listed on the crew manifest. And airport security has no record of a crew technician boarding after passengers were seated. Who was he? And what was he doing near the cockpit moments before takeoff? Putting it all together, a terrifying theory began to surface. Dr. Prateek Joshi discovered something tied to medical fraud, falsified patient data, and potentially illegal licensing agreements. He compiled evidence, prepared to go public. He booked a return trip to India, possibly to meet a contact or secure more files. And then, the plane crashed. One investigator told a journalist off record, "I don't think he was just unlucky. I think someone made sure he never left that country alive." And the crash may have been the cover story. Among the few surviving belongings of the Joshi family was a child's drawing, folded, crumpled, but still intact. It was drawn by Mariah, the eldest daughter. It showed their family standing in front of an airplane, smiling. Above it, she'd written in pencil, "Going to India with Daddy. He says we'll come back happy." She never did. By now, the world had seen the headlines. They had grieved the loss. They had watched as images of Dr. Prateek Joshi and his family flashed across every screen. Frozen in time, smiling just days before they were all gone. But as the dust settled, and the investigations were forced open by public pressure, one truth became disturbingly clear. Flight 171 wasn't just a crash. It was a cover-up. And Dr. Joshi may have been the reason the flight never stood a chance. Let's start with what we now know, thanks to leaked internal reports and the recovered flash drive. Dr. Prateek Joshi had been compiling medical evidence. He discovered tampered radiology scans, altered by a private AI software linked to fast-track medical clearances for foreign nationals. He traced the manipulation back to a network operating in India, Dubai, and the UK, where uncertified patients were being approved for critical procedures and pharmaceutical testing, all under false reports. And the plane he boarded, the one he thought would take his family safely home, had 2 unidentified names in first class who never showed up. Those seats, 4B and 4C, still remain a mystery. But their booking codes were found embedded in the encrypted files on Dr. Joshi's flash drive. Someone knew he was coming, and they booked those seats in advance, to watch him or to ensure he boarded. The Joshi family arrived at Ahmedabad airport early. Security footage showed nothing unusual. But at gate 11, near boarding, 2 security staff members were briefly pulled aside. reportedly for a sweep. Minutes later, a man in a black suit, not listed on the flight crew, was seen near the cockpit. He disappeared just before takeoff. Air India denied any irregularity, but under pressure from the press, a whistleblower confirmed. We've had multiple cases of private contractors posing as security or technicians. It's not uncommon during sensitive international flights. Sensitive? Why would a routine commercial flight be sensitive? Unless someone on that plane was carrying dangerous knowledge or evidence meant to expose a billion-dollar fraud. Experts reviewing the black box data of Flight 171 found at least 3 key anomalies. Hydraulic failure triggered despite clearance. The system that failed had been flagged and cleared just hours before the flight. The technician who cleared it vanished after the crash. Still missing. The logbook entry showing the mechanical issue was manually deleted, confirmed by backup restoration. Manual overrides failed within 6 minutes of takeoff. That should never happen unless backup systems were either bypassed or tampered with. The plane attempted a turn toward a known emergency field. Evidence suggests the pilots were trying to land safely. They were fighting the controls until power and steering suddenly dropped to zero. In short, everything that could go wrong went wrong at the perfect moment. Almost too perfectly. Since the crash, at least 4 lawsuits have been filed. By the families of victims against Air India for negligence. By a former medical researcher, accusing Joshi's hospital of suppressing evidence. And by an anonymous UK-based party, attempting to freeze the flash drive data under national security interests. National security? Why would a whistleblower's hospital files trigger that? Unless the fraud Dr. Joshi discovered wasn't just medical. Unless it tied into larger global programs, including human trials, pharmaceutical exports, or cross-border research approvals. The kind of things governments would rather the public never see. Though parts of the data remain encrypted or classified, the decrypted files already show a pattern. Radiology scans from 6 different countries, altered using the same AI signature. Communications between doctors, tech firms, and overseas facilitators. References to A171 clearance, which investigators believe was a code name for getting fake medical files past airline security systems for certain high-clearance passengers. Was Flight 171 being used for more than just civilian travel? Was Dr. Joshi a threat to an entire international operation? And if so, was the crash engineered? No investigation into this story would be complete without mentioning the technician, the man who signed off on Flight 171's airworthiness, then vanished. His name, Suraj Menon, a 32-year-old contractor hired for overflow maintenance support during India's summer travel surge. Records show he arrived at the airport at 9:32 p.m. the night before the flight. He was last seen entering Hangar B, where Flight 171 had been moved for inspection. After the crash, he never clocked out, never went home, never used his ID again. When investigators went to his listed address, it was empty. A decoy. No furniture, no documents, and his bank account received a $48,000 wire transfer 3 days before the crash. From a shell company based in Singapore, the same company listed in the metadata of Dr. Joshi's encrypted documents. In the chaos after the crash, one last email surfaced. It was sent from a public terminal in Mumbai to a small independent journalist. He wasn't the only one who knew. Dr. Joshi tried to warn them. They made sure the warning died with him. But the data survived. Look inside the black box. Look beyond the wires. You'll find fingerprints. That email was signed with just one word. Surian. A code name? Or someone still out there watching? In the end, this isn't just a story of systems and sabotage. It's the story of a family. Of 5 lives full of promise, erased in minutes. Dr. Prateek Joshi, who believed in truth, even when it cost him everything. Dr. Komi Vyas, his wife, who saw the signs but followed him out of love. Mariah, Nakul, and Pradyut. Their 3 children, innocent and unaware of the storm around them. They didn't die in vain, because now the world is watching. As of today, the Indian government has reopened the official investigation into Flight 171. The UK Medical Ethics Council is conducting an independent inquiry into Dr. Joshi's flagged patients. A global movement, #JusticeFor171, is demanding transparency from both governments. And the flash drive, the one piece of evidence they couldn't burn, is being reviewed by international watchdogs. The truth is rising from the wreckage. They thought the fire would destroy everything. They thought the wreckage would bury the evidence. They thought no one would look twice at a grieving man with a broken truth. But they were wrong. Dr. Prateek Joshi's story is not just a tragedy. It's a warning, a testimony, and now a legacy. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.